Well, welcome, Wyoming. Thank you for joining me today. We want to always thank your survey agency for approving the 3-year grant to bring culture change to Wyoming. It's been my joy to get to work with all of you. And it's really exciting, I think. How about you? That 2.5 years into it, I'm starting to see some things happening. So you all can be very proud of that. And that's typically what happens. We get some knowledge out there, talk about things, try things, We call this grant Implementing Culture Change Throughout Wyoming, Affecting Resident-Directed Living and Team Member Retention. And so to be honest, no matter who you are listening, over 30 years of our culture change movement, implementing practices that help make this nursing home more of a home and less of an institution tends to translate into staff retention. And that's been a thing way before COVID was a thing, way before all the agency staff, in place is a thing. So I want to encourage you all to, even though, we're in hard times, culture change has always helped, whether it's hard times or good times. And I was, it was kind of voted on to go through the dining practice standards. And that is also my joy to teach this to people, because I was very involved. I was the facilitator and the project coordinator when we developed the dining practice standards. I had a contract with CMS. CMS is involved. And we are now today going to actually finish, because these next 3 sections are go together well. They're called Honoring Choice and Shifting Traditional Professional Control to Support Self-Directed Living. I love that line, by the way. We'll come back to all this. And a section we called New Negative Outcomes. So thanks again for joining me. All of this began in 2008 when CMS and the Pioneer Network did a big Creating Home Symposium. Number 1 was on the environment. And we held it much like a congressional hearing, where we asked experts to speak about the issues of culture change and the regs, culture change and life safety code, culture change and design. And then out of that beautiful first symposium came a task force with the NFPA, and we made 4 big changes to the life safety code, which we're very proud of. To be honest, the NFPA, the National Fire Protection Association, fell in love with our movement, and they were happy to help to create home. And then we also made some big changes to some quality of life interpretive guidance that I do believe most of it has remained, as far as I can tell. And then also that led to the next symposium in 2010, which was now on culture change and food and dining. And to be honest, the main premise was, we have got to figure out how to help people eat what they want to eat, period. Isn't that great? It just bubbled up like that is the next issue. So again, I got to facilitate that symposium, type up all the notes, and then, like I said, do a task force. And so I feel very privileged to have learned a lot through this process. Now, these standards are available to you. Go get them. Just put them in a Google search. They're at the Pioneer Network website. And if you can't find them for some reason, let me know. I'll help you find them. And something we're very proud of is that we purposely invited 12 standard setting clinical groups to be a part of our task force. And then we also asked them to officially agree. We couldn't quite get the word endorse, but we did get the word agree. That's pretty darn close, don't you think? So look who's on the list: the American Association of Long-Term Care Nursing, Association of Nurse Assessment Coordinators, the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, the American Medical Directors Association, the OT Association, the pharmacists, the speech therapists, the food and nutrition professionals, the gerontological advanced practice nurses, the Hartford Institute for Geriatric Nursing. Look at this great list. The directors of nursing, NADANA Long-Term Care Group, and the National Gerontological Nursing Association. So one thing we've always said is, if you were to run into problems, let's say a physician will not let you do such and such, and you found it in these standards, the great news is that the American Medical Directors Association has actually agreed with these. So we found so much support for these new standards from all of these groups. We quote AMDA quite a bit. We quote CMS regs quite a bit. We quote research. We also quote the dietitians quite a bit. And I'll tell you what, it's amazing when people think alike and then you can bring it all together and it can be helpful. So what I'm going to start with is a list of like the new standards. So in the last webinars, I went through, let's see, hang on. The other sections were diet liberalization. We went through the three main diets, cardiac, low sodium, and low sugar, if I'm saying that right. And then the next webinar was on altered consistency and also moving towards real food. I love that. And now let's pretend I just finished both those, actually those three sections. And I would be saying to you right here, now, after those three sections, we now list what we consider new recommended course of practice or standards of practice, okay? And here they go. Number one, from now on, diet will be determined with the person and not without the person, and not exclusively according to their diagnosis. Isn't that great? So say it 3 times, with the person, not for the person. In our movement, we talk a lot about with the person, not to the person. Another new standard is to monitor the person and their condition related to their goals. Oh, how do you like that? Not the daughter's goals, not the doctor's goals, and not the surveyor's goals regarding their nutritional status and their physical, mental, and psychosocial well-being. So getting to the person's goals, so important. That's like another whole webinar. I just did that today for another group. But just so you know, the CMS regs, you can do a word search. And if you put these 3 words, the resident's goals, singular, you will find that 153 times. Whereas in the former set of regs, it was only in there 3 times. We've got to get better at asking people what their goals are for their life, for their diabetes, for how to live their life, for their incontinence, to be honest, for trying to walk again, right? And then the next one, although a person may not have been able to make decisions about some aspects of their life, that doesn't mean they can't make choices in dining. Isn't that great? Dr. Bill Thomas was the first one to say, come on, sure, they might not be able to make decisions about their 401k, but people, even with dementia, can make decisions about what they want to eat right now. Something else was kind of neat to find in a discovery process. I got to read all the codes of ethics for different professions that we all represent. And guess what? It's there. Somehow it is there in all of our code of ethics that we are being asked to support the person, not to tell the person what to do, not to force them, right? We know this. So that's something cool you can lean on as you try to honor the person and their choices. Next standard, when one makes what we might consider a risky decision, the plan of care will be adjusted to honor informed choice and provide support to mitigate risk. Wow, there's a lot in that sentence. So we got to get better at honoring and look at the words informed choice. So if you don't use that lingo, I highly recommend it. It is powerful and it comes from CMS. So, who does the informing? We do. And who gets to make the choice? The person. Informed, our part, choice, their part. And provide support to mitigate risk. That's another lovely word, is to mitigate risk. And my favorite example ever is, let me ask all of you a trivia question. You can unmute or put in the chat box. Get ready. Here we go. If I tell you, no, I will not eat a puree diet, what would you offer me next? You're afraid I might choke. So you can't make me, but you want to mitigate the risk of choking. What would you offer me next? And that's a really great example of providing support. Yes. And so what I've come to learn it to really be called is regular food, finely chopped. Doesn't that sound good? So you guys, how does it sound? Ground, mechanical, chopped, mechanical soft. Does it sound yummy? Eric, you're shaking your head no. It doesn't. So I want to encourage my brothers and sisters in this movement. You don't have to call it those weird words. I learned this from the physicians. AMDA says that regular food, finely chopped, is often just as well tolerated. That's another weird word, but it works for people. And here's a couple of reasons why. When we grind things, guess what? It gets dry. That's why we put the gravy on it. And that's why it doesn't taste so good or taste the same. Also, when we grind things, now we have another device that we put food in, right? How clean is the device? How clean do you get it? It takes more time. Someone once taught me to just take a regular baked breast of chicken and finely chop it. Actually goes quicker. You have less to clean up, tastes better. The person's probably going to eat it. Isn't that great? Right there, that is a picture of mitigating risk and supporting informed choice. The next standard, when caring for frail elders, there's often no clear right answer. Whew. Can I hear an amen? That's really profound, everyone. We should say that more often. Possible interventions, by the way, we really try to refer to these as approaches now. It's much softer. It's more person-centered. Possible approaches often have the potential to both help and harm this older person. This is why the physician must explain the risks and benefits to both resident and team, and the information should be discussed amongst the team, resident, and family. So guess what? I'm proud of this. This point right here, the risks and benefits got into the regulations. And I think it's coming up, the reg, hold tight. Next standard, resident then has the right to make his or her informed choice. Oh, get ready, hold on to your hat. Even if it is not to follow recommended medical advice. What do you know? And the team supports the person and their decision, again, mitigating risks by offering our support. For example, offering foods of a natural pureed consistency when someone might refuse the tube feeding. So it can go that way as well. And notice it says foods of a natural pureed consistency. This was the webinar last month. If you'd like to go back to it, there's a long list of foods that are so yummy that are naturally a pureed consistency that we tend to forget about. Hey, Erica Palmer, why don't you tell them what's your number one food? It sounds like for people in your home who are on a pureed consistency that came up today. Erica Palmer, can you unmute? Tell them the yummy one. She might have to step away. Erica.
I'm here.
Erica, what is it? Yeah.
Oh, geez. Now you're gonna. Oh man.
The yummy one. Erica, the yummy one.
Things are coming. Oh, ew, the hummus.
No.
Is it the hummus?
No. How about the dessert one?
Oh gosh.
Don't you guys serve cheesecake? You told me.
Oh, that's what you guys were talking about.
Yeah.
Yep.
Sorry, Erica. Put you on the spot. Okay, guys. So one time, a dietitian at the end of a speech presentation on this came up to me and said, "Carmen, if I ever have to be on pureed, just give me cheesecake." Isn't that great? And so that's the idea. What are foods that are naturally of pureed consistency that people would love to eat? And just for fun, why don't you put some more in the chat box? Anything you might be thinking about. And then we say the next standard. It's when the team makes decision for a person without their acknowledgement that problems arise. The agreed upon plan of care should be monitored to make sure we as a community are best meeting this person's needs. Let's just think about that, guys. Like maybe a decision was made at care conference, and sadly, in our institutional history, sometimes some professional that wasn't there kind of swoops into the equation and maybe undoes something. That is what we're calling out. Don't let that happen. It's got to be in team, okay? We've also learned that if it's in team with the person, with their family, and they see you doing your very best to honor choice while also mitigating risk of bad things happening, you are less likely to get sued. How can they sue you? They were there. They were part of the conversation. It is tricky, guys, to honor choice and also provide everyone to be safe, right? And you are called to do both. You are all the time. And one is not more important than the other. So these standards were built to try to help you do that very thing. And in the end, no matter what, all decisions default to the person. And since we wrote this 20 years ago, wow, 10 years ago, someone has also wisely pointed out, really, it should say all decisions belong to the person. So now we move into the section called honoring choices. Here comes some good regs I said would be coming up. Hopefully you know these regs by heart. Tag 561 is called self-determination. Resident has the right to choose what? Activities, yeah, we know that. What's really profound, I think, is schedules. Has the right to choose schedules, including sleeping and waking. Choose healthcare consistent with their interests, assessments, and plan of care. So some of you are trying to be flexible with your schedules. We will have arrived when our systems actually are very supple and flexible, and they honor the individuals who live there instead of just honoring the institutional schedule. One time somebody called it the almighty schedule. We gotta quit bowing down to the almighty schedule. And many homes have done it over the past 30 years. If they can do it, you can do it. This reg also says, it's kind of off the topic, but it's so good. The second bullet, people have the right to interact with members of the community, both inside and outside that building. Kind of interesting, isn't it? Having gone through COVID. And then really a strong statement, residents have the right to make choices about aspects of their life in this building that are significant to them. Wow. What would be significant to you? I think sleep would be really significant to me. Getting strong coffee early in the morning would be significant to me. I'd love to hear from you. What would be significant to you? And then here's some other thoughts that came up. We called it current thinking. You know, sometimes thought leaders have thinking before research even. And there might be research that we didn't even find. But look at this, put resident choice before regs and guidelines, such as the RDAs, the recommended daily allowances, which are only generic and they are estimated nutritional needs. They are not individualized. Woo, good point, right? Don't put them before the person. Residents who have capacity to decide, look at this, should not be denied the choice to eat hot dogs or grapes whole, which many homes and companies have imposed to minimize the choking risk. Isn't that terrible? Taking away the right to eat certain things. Wow. Now, it's usually meant well, but it's something for us to really grapple with. Another point that we've been making through the years, there needs to be a new red flag, or let's say assumption, for surveyors and providers, all of us, that a tray line or a set and limited meal time are now viewed as an obvious contradiction of choice. So notice it says red flag. So let's say tray service is going on in the kitchen. Maybe what's going on the trays was ordered by each person. That's individualized, but maybe not. So just seeing no interaction with residents might be a red flag, as well as breakfast is at 7. There's no choice in that, is there? So we're moving out of that, guys. Think of the baby boomers. Is anybody going to want that? Are you going to go to breakfast at 7 and what they tell you to do? Think of the baby boomers. And then another red flag is this. Any notation in a record or care plan of a resident being called non-compliant. Non-compliant with what? Usually physician orders, is viewed, whoa, as an obvious contradiction to resident choice. With a shift now to guess who's non-compliant. Isn't that great? I love that. So how dare we call someone non-compliant? Think of the kind of the judgment involved. Think of how negative it is. And what does that really mean? Imagine you're explaining it to your kid. What does non-compliant mean, Mom? Well, let's see. The doctor says this person should eat this or should not eat that, and they don't want to do that. So notice, guys, it's actually giving it away. It's a choice that someone's wanting to make that we're not letting them. Now, who's non-compliant? Our nursing home is non-compliant. Wow. Non-compliant with the tags I just read, the tag on choice. Here's another one. There's a reg under rights, the right to refuse, request, or decline treatment. So I have the right to refuse that physician order, that diet. And then 578, I have the same rights as any citizen of the United States. Wow. You and me. And we are getting to self-direct our life every single day. So guess what they should be able to do? Now here's the recommended course of action after that section on honoring choice, and or to think of it as a new standard of practice. Now forgive me, it's kind of long, but it's so rich. Provide education and support to anyone speaking on behalf of the resident. That could be us, family, friend, legal rep, on their obligation in advocating for the resident, the person's individual life patterns, their history, current preferences, opinions, and wishes, not necessarily ours. As a family member, not my opinions and wishes. As staff, as nurses, as dietitians, I'm not calling anybody out, as any of us working in it, not what we think should happen, but finding out what they want and how do we support them. Education should be inclusive so that the representatives clearly see our roles as advocates for the person and their choice, not our own. Over the years, I was daring people at lots of culture change conferences to consider giving every single team member the same title. Now that doesn't take away your credential, your license, your type, your letters behind your name, okay? But what if every single one of us had the title on our name tag of advocate? How would that change the world? It saddens me that over the years, if some resident rights issue came up, who did we run and go get? Any social workers on the line? Why would we need to go get the social worker? Shouldn't we all be advocating for this person's rights? That's our challenge, everybody. So now the next section is called this. Personally, I love this. Shifting professional control to support self-directed living. Now let me kind of break that down. So what we're referring to is this supposed control that we have over people. If we say, excuse me, we're checking on the residents, do you hear it? When I teach proactive practices to prevent falls, I have a curriculum, and one of the points I teach is to proactively check in with residents. Do you hear the subtlety? And that's what we're trying to get at here. So much of what we do as the professionals in the medical facility is we have this overarching control. And do fellow adults appreciate that? I have heard many people say, I was in 4 nursing homes in Colorado last week, and twice or 3 times I heard people living there say, I will not be treated like a child. What's that tell you? And see, that's us sometimes, guys. You should go to bed now. It's time to go to bed. Time for your bath. Time to eat. However, we might be saying things, right? And even the subtle, I'm going to check on the residents when it could be, I'm going to check in with. So you hear the difference. It's so good. And then if you didn't know, person-centered, even though CMS brought a lot of attention to it with the new regs in 16, believe it or not, person-centered was already outdated. Makes me so sad. When something gets published and it's already outdated. The culture change movement had already moved on to person-directed. And then we've also made a shift to talk more about life and living than care. So we invite you to think about that. Do you want to stay person-centered or maybe person-directed? Even with dementia, right? Can someone direct their lives? Yes, they can. Should they be asked what they think more often, perhaps? Probably, yes, they should. That's our way of honoring this person. And people with dementia sometimes tell us things without words, right? And your direct caregivers know what they like and don't like because they know them well. So self-directed is another way to say it. You and I are self-directing our lives, and we're going to want to all of our life. And again, I'm trying to talk more about life and living than care, because when we just talk about care, we are not talking about life and living when that needs to be the focus, I think. Plus, care is just part of our life. It's not our whole life. I actually think good care should be a given. I'm sorry, but it's just something to think about. Shouldn't good care be a given by now? Shouldn't we be really good at that? And I'm sorry, I know COVID, I know agency, but let's get back to it. And plus, you're paying agency caregivers a lot of money. I think I'd have high expectations for that money. So anyway, that started with these new standards back in 2011, this kind of language. So here comes some backing for shifting this control. Look at what the dietitians have said nationally. Despite the growing body of evidence discouraging the use of therapeutic diets for older adults, these diets are still regularly prescribed. Research hasn't demonstrated benefits of restricting the sodium, cholesterol, fat, and carbohydrates for older people. And we really are talking about older people. That's where there's a win here, everybody, for all of us. Our older body, older metabolism tends to not be affected very much by the difference in food. And so it's a win for us to honor older people to eat what they want to eat. Now, a younger person, maybe the food intake, the sugar intake, the salt intake does affect those different parts and measures in our bodies. I already mentioned these. I think lean into these regs. Residents have the right to refuse, to request, to decline, to discontinue. They have the right to make choice. They have the same rights as you and me. They have the right to informed choice. I mentioned starting to use the lingo. Something we've learned about waivers, everybody, don't go to waivers. My understanding from lawyers is that the court looked at a waiver, even just the title, as if the nursing home is waiving their responsibility for oversight to this person. And you don't really mean that. You don't mean to waive your responsibility. So it's better to do some of what you've heard so far, is to show that you've informed the person, to show that you've talked about it with all the right people, to show that the team together decided how to support the person's informed choice and mitigate risk at the same time. And then here's some really cool stuff I found in the research. So check this out. Have you ever heard of a personal nutrition biography or an individual nutrition biography? This is so cool. As we know, that residents have their very individual biography of nutrition, and they are experts in preparing meals. Wow, haven't these older people prepared a lot of meals? The cook meets every week with small groups discussing a variety of food and meal-related topics. The cook gets to know each person, learning their wishes, expectations, skills, and expertise. Wow. We observed by doing this, life became normal, livelier, people eat better, loneliness, helplessness, and monotony are reduced, and residents needed less medicine and ended up sleeping better. So you can go look up that study, but isn't it sweet and pretty simple, for heaven's sake? Again, these are adults. They're usually older than us. We're certainly equal. We're not, over them. And this is kind of a neat way to think about honoring people and finding out what their personal nutrition biography is. We actually created a form. It's in the toolkit. I'll tell you more about, but you could do this, I'd love to hear from you guys in the chat box, every single one of you. Think of a food that you can't do. It makes you sick, or you can't handle the texture. Now, Erica Palmer, tell us about hummus, right? So think about foods that don't work well for you, and then think about foods that do work well for you. They seem to help you. Perhaps they're even a comfort food. Did you know the definition of a comfort food is that it starts to bring you comfort just thinking about it. So please, you guys, we're all friends. I'd love to hear from each one of you in the chat box. What is a food that does not work well with you? Pam Schrecker says turnips. Yep. And Dawn Marie says liver. I just had some the other day. Isn't that something? We're all different. Salmon loaf, beets, hard-boiled eggs. Okay, now try to think of foods that have the opposite effect. Oh, they make you happy. They change your mood. You feel healthy, maybe healthy eating, or maybe not. You know, that's the idea. Chocolate, apple pie, cake. It's hard to talk about food, isn't it? I'm going to want to go eat after this. Anybody else? And then let's see, anything else with food? Like, can you describe like texture is a problem for me? Or, oh, this is interesting. I am a big eater, but I will not eat at night. Isn't that hilarious? I'll eat all day long, but for some reason, the idea of eating in bed or getting up and eating during the night, isn't that interesting? I don't know why. Things like that. What else is unique to you? Fried shrimp. Pam, is that a food you like, fried shrimp? All right, I'll keep going. You keep giving me food for thought. No pun intended. Okay, shifting that professional control. Here's some other neat things to think about. She loves fried shrimp. Go, Pam. We all need to shift. That's a good word, everybody. That's another word for changing culture. Shift to agreeing that caregivers will offer to do what is clinically best for a person, and if the person refuses, that's okay. Isn't that cool? We have got to say that more often. Along with liability comes responsibility to the person whom we are serving. We're serving them, not the insurance company. If an elder decides to not eat what is clinically best, we work with them, but we never force them. Caring for someone does not mean you have to make the choices for them. Can I hear a amen? Anybody? Woohoo. In fact, here's a hard question for me to ask you. Who's willing to answer it? Maybe in the chat box. What is it called when you force someone to do what they don't want to do? And we are not supposed to do that, are we? So we can't force people. The word is abuse. Thank you, Pam. Kind of hard to say it, but let's just be honest. And then another really profound statement we found: if the person is sufficiently informed about the risks and benefits of acceptance or refusal of a proposed approach or treatment, and they refuse, look at this, the clinician should respect the person's decision. Another amen, huh? Yes, yes, yes. Have you ever heard of the idea of, you can fire your physician? You can. So a lot of beautiful thinking here. That comes from the Mayo Clinic proceedings. That's physicians saying that to physicians. And then the last section is called New Negative Outcome. Let me show you what we found here. Here, we were surprised to find that preferences has actually risen to the level of immediate jeopardy. So we're at tag 692, nutrition. And where the survey state operations manual towards the end of the section gives you examples and deficiency categorization. And they tend to start with level 4, immediate jeopardy. Dietary restrictions or downgraded diet textures, such as mechanical soft or pureed, were provided by the nursing home against the residents' expressed preferences and resulted in substantial and ongoing decline in food intake, resulting in significant or severe unplanned weight loss with accompanying irreversible functional decline to the point where the person was placed on hospice. So hopefully that would never happen in your home, but What is profound, I think, is the word preferences is in a description of immediate jeopardy. That really brings it to a new level. And it kind of shows up also here in severity level 3, actual harm. The failure to assess relative risks and benefits, right? Not only benefits that we think the preventing of the choking, right? The risk is maybe somebody doesn't eat, and the subsequent problems from there. Risks and benefits of restricting or downgrading diet and food consistency, or to accommodate a resident's choice, kind of another word for preference, to accept the related risks resulted in declining food fluid intake and significant weight loss. So there's choice. And then the failure to accommodate documented resident food dislikes and preferences resulted in poor food and fluid intake and a decline in function. So isn't that interesting? I think so. Preferences has risen to the level of immediate jeopardy and actual harm. All right. And then new negative outcome, some current thinking, professional standards. This is nurses talking. Professional standards direct nurses to act to prevent unsafe, illegal, and unethical practices and protect people who may be at risk. Nurses are educated to look for errors, like in meds and treatments, and to look for outcomes related to meds and treatments, adverse outcomes. When a resident refuses a med or treatment, the physician is promptly notified. But sometimes the standard doesn't translate into other aspects of care, such as acting on evidence that nutrition practices are not achieving intended outcomes. Sorry, that's kind of long, but here's a nurse making the point that as nurses, we're pretty good at calling the doctor when someone won't take their med or won't allow a treatment, but we've sort of become what, the frog in the pot? Help me here. How should I say that? We've sort of become, I don't know, numb to why don't we translate that into an order for a restricted diet? And then she goes on, when a resident refuses a meal or is observed consuming minimal amounts of food, prompt action is also needed there. Using current practice standards, physician notification, sadly, may not occur until resident loses weight. So utilizing a proactive approach should be our practice standard. Would love to know what you all think about that. Do you let a physician know right away when someone doesn't want to eat the pureed diet? And by the way, something I've learned, physician order becomes the key. And if an order, think of that dumb word, everybody, order, guess where that comes from? Order. How many of us talk about the physician's orders in our life? To be honest, physicians give recommendations, and some physicians actually call it that. So if an order isn't working for someone in the nursing home, wouldn't it be great if nurses advocated for you and me and got on it right away and said, doctor, she's 98, she's eaten bacon her whole life, let's get rid of this order, okay? So nurses, we need your help to get rid of orders that don't work for people. And our recommended course of action or standard now at the end of this section, new negative outcome, is this, that we all would offer choice in every interaction, even with and in particular to people with cognitive impairment, in order to what? Give them control. We all know that we all want this. You know, it's too bad it's not a reg. Like, make sure the resident is in control of their life. We almost need that. Plus, then they have higher satisfaction with their life. And did you know, research shows that when you and I have the opportunity to seriously make a choice, we actually build neurons in our brain. Build. Wow, we can help everybody have healthier brains, is what I take away from that, by giving more and more and more and more choice, more and more and more control. So from a simple choice, you know, would you like to wear this or that? Would you like to sit here or there? Would you like to drink water or juice? A simple this or that choice to a more complicated choice for other people, right? Here's a menu. I remember being at a restaurant in Ohio and there were 5 things I loved on the menu. And Dawn Marie, guess what one of them was? Yep, liver and onions. Isn't that ironic? We didn't plan this today now, did we? And imagine there are 5 things you love. That's a true choice, everybody. Isn't that great? We call it true choice when you get to truly choose between 5 things you really like. Look at our nursing home history, you know. Well, would you like the main meal or the alternate? What if you don't like either one, right? What if it's liver and turnips? You know, things that most people don't like. So that's not a choice. It looks like it's a choice. We call that a token choice. So be aware of token choices and be aware that you personally can help people build their brains by offering more choice. And that probably applies to all of us in our homes and families as well. Let me show you what the regs did in 2016 regarding menus. So first, this is so good. Menus must reflect, based on your reasonable efforts, the religious, cultural, ethnic needs of your resident population, as well as input received from people who live there, residents and resident groups. So use it as a checklist. Is there any religious food item? We're not talking about cultural, ethnic. And then look at this. Nothing in this paragraph should be construed to limit the resident's right to make personal dietary choices. So you just read, like there's more to it, but you just read the paragraph about menus. And then it says nothing in this paragraph you just read should be construed to limit the resident's right to make personal dietary choices. You know, having been a surveyor, I feel like I'm reading something between the lines. And this is what it is. Surveyors, even if a person doesn't get milk, and even though it was on the menu, you've got to ask the resident if they even wanted milk. You see, no offense to any surveyor that might be listening. I was one. But for many years, surveyors were citing that not everything that was listed in the menu or for that diet was given to the person. And then oftentimes the deficiency didn't mention whether the resident wanted it. And I think of myself, I used to be able to drink milk, now I can't. So I don't want milk, and you would know that about me. So nothing, surveyors, in this paragraph should be construed to limit the resident's right to make choice. Isn't that good? And then we already mentioned this, and I want to show you this photo, real people at the nursing home in Colorado many years ago. Can you imagine coming to the meal and being asked, would you like to dine inside or outside? Ha! That's a new element of choice, isn't it? I'd love to encourage you all to see if you can make that happen, especially in the good weather. Good weather goes by quick, doesn't it? And here's some more good things that landed in the regs. I'm just going to go to the bold stuff. Food that accommodates residents' allergies, intolerances, and preferences. We have a lot more of that stuff going on these days, don't we? Way before all the allergies and sensitivities to food, probably 30 years ago, I heard a true story where someone didn't like eggs. Oh, and she had been a nurse. So you know what she did? She said she was allergic to eggs. That's great. It's so good. Smart woman. Then she didn't get eggs, but we shouldn't have to go to such extremes now, should we? And then appealing options of similar nutritive value to people who choose not to eat the food that is initially served or who request a different meal choice. Now, look at that, guys. That's a waste of money to bring food to someone that they don't want it, right? And so getting to restaurant style and menus will save you money. And then notice the word again, preferences also shows up with drinks and hydration. Open dining. I want to just encourage you all to think about doing it. Just do it. We all know we want it. We all know it's good. We all know when we live there, we're going to want it. Baby boomers are going to insist upon it. Coming out of the pandemic could be a moment where you just do things different, things you've always wanted to do. So a couple things about open dining. I feel it's easier than you might think it is, and I'll tell you why. So let's say your breakfast time is arbitrarily set. Usually it's arbitrary. Who even set that time? 10 years ago, maybe. 7 a.m. And then I know you're all different, but for the sake of the argument, let's say, even though you get everybody into the dining room at 7, hurry, 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 everybody get in there, hurry, hurry, it's 7 o'clock. Can you serve everybody at the same time anyway? Nope. So guess what it becomes? Hurry up and wait and snore. And now when you try to help someone eat that's sleeping, did you know that's unsafe? That's our fault. It's the experience of hurry up and wait. Why did they get me up so early if I'm sleeping here now? So you can't serve everyone at the same time anyway. It's a broken design. Why did we do this? It creates a rush hour. Rush, 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 hurry, hurry. And when CNAs have to hurry, do you think they have time to brush teeth and brush hair like they want to? Let's assume they want to, right? And so by relaxing the rush, so many good outcomes come from it. And so my encouragement to you is simply to stop saying breakfast is at 7 and perhaps start saying breakfast is served between 7 and 8. Probably a rough estimate. Most places go about an hour, maybe go less. Maybe you could extend it to an hour to try to get to open dining. And then it's a practice in our movement to have a 2-hour window. And if they can do it in Missouri many years ago, you could too. In fact, in Missouri, we got to visit one day, a culture change buddy and I, Karen Schieneman from CMS, retired now. And we were there all day. And at about 11:45 in the morning, I happened to note the time, we were in a hallway and a woman named Wyla was standing in the door of her room. And she looked at Eric, the administrator, and said, "Eric, I just woke up and I'm ready for breakfast." This was in 2001, I believe. And my institutional brain, who can guess what I thought to myself? I thought, I bet you Wyla's confused. She already had breakfast. It's going on lunch. I bet she means lunch. Yeah. And then together, we just go to this dining room right here. And Eric and the administrator tells the servers, you can't see them that well behind there, that Wyla just woke up and she's ready for breakfast. Isn't that great? It was real, what I was seeing and hearing. And later, the DON said, and because of this, she has no more behaviors. Now, notice how terrible that language is. I put it in quotes. We try not to even say it anymore. She didn't have behaviors. No, she was upset. And you and I would be too if somebody woke her up and she wasn't ready to get up. We call it natural awakening to not wake someone up. And is it even fair then to call it a behavior when it's our fault? And this home did a buffet. Help yourself if you can. If not, the servers will put it on a plate for you, plus a salad bar or order from the menu. Talk about choice. And then notice what's on the plate. Can anyone see what's on the plate? This is back when you actually developed film. Wow. And look what's on the plate. The point here would be nothing. Nothing is on that plate. Something we've learned in our movement is that when people get what they want in an amount they're hungry for, they tend to eat it, and your home saved money. They saved $20,000 a year. And I love this photo of assisted living residents getting their own food. And if they need help, a staff member helps them get it to their place. Also, if you're wondering about what we used to call the 14-hour rule, I would encourage you to call it a 16-hour rule. Isn't this sad? So this has never changed, this sentence. There must be no more than 14 hours between a substantial evening meal and breakfast the following day, except when a nourishing snack is served at bedtime, then Up to 16 hours may elapse between a substantial evening meal and breakfast the following day if a resident group agrees to this meal span. Isn't that something? We could have been saying 16 hours. How many of you serve nourishing snacks at bedtime? I'm guessing all of you. And you could easily ask a resident group if they agree with this wider span. And here's the even better part. No matter what times you might tell me for supper, supper is served between this hour and this hour. And then you give me breakfast is served from this hour to this hour. The end of supper and the beginning of breakfast is always within 14 hours. So you meet the intent of this reg, 14 hours, and you also meet the intent of how many choice regs did we just cover? Nobody talks about that when they bring up the 14-hour rule. There are more regs about choice than about anything with 14 hours between supper and breakfast. Isn't that great? And then something new, suitable, nourishing, alternative meals and snacks must be provided to those who want to eat at non-traditional times or outside of scheduled meal service times, consistent with the care plan. Why not do open dining then? I mentioned this, much more relaxed, more cares get done. And almost to the end here, everyone. Here's another way to do choice. Some of you maybe have heard of the hot food cart. There's one called the Suzy Q cart. I'm not advertising, I'm just telling you about them. In fact, a home in Minnesota that I got to work with got a Stampede grant and they bought one of these Suzy Q carts. They also got education, and sure enough, satisfaction was much better, and it even impacted turnover. And so the food comes to the table, only one person serves it, so you have a food safe trained person. It's not like lots of people getting in there like a buffet, no. But they can see the food, smell the food, interact, create relationship. And my favorite part, look at this choice. I'll just have mashed potatoes with lots of gravy, please. And you are empowered to give the person actually what they want, and you save the home money by only giving them what they want. Now, even if you never got a hot food cart, you could begin to do this. And what if you had more choices? So you have a dessert, dessert cart go around with choice, a cereal cart with choice, drinks with choice, etc. You could do that tomorrow. And I want to advertise Pam Schrecker's on the line from Star Valley. Pam was on the last Wyoming Echo, the geriatrics Echo with the University of Wyoming. Pam spoke about resident-directed living, giving residents more and more of their life back and choices, directing what goes on in the home. And then the week prior, the time prior, her colleague, Troy Bailey, dietitian at Star Valley, also taught about how they moved into restaurant style with menus, are also saving money and creating a lot more choice. And by the way, that is part of our movement. It's considered a practice. It's on the Artifacts of Culture Change tool that you offer at least one of the following styles: restaurant, buffet, or family style. And CMS has also referred to our dining practice standards. It's not in the regs themselves, sadly, but it was in the, help me here, the preamble or the executive summary, that huge document as the new regs were coming out. Does anybody have any questions, ideas, comments? And could you please help me for the grant by putting in the chat box your knowledge before and after this webinar? And how about mute and unmute, and we'll talk. I would love that. Who's got a question or a comment or something to add? And if you don't, I got more. Please join us in changing language. We are trying to avoid that word facility. And Wyoming, I'd like you to think about this. Maybe you could make a splash. Maybe this culture change initiative over these 3 years could start to talk about moving away from this institutional word. Even though it's in all of the titles of things in your state, why not? You know? If you hang out with culture change people, you don't hear that F word. And people actually call it that just for fun. You'll hear people refer to the home or your community or just the name of the place. Way to go, you guys. Some of you as communities have decided to use the term community member instead of resident or patient. And some of you are also using the word neighbor, and you've made this decision with the people who actually live there. Beautiful. Beware of labels: feeder, hoarder, wanderer, isolator, screamer, complainer, frequent faller. There's a great quote: label jars, not people. And another great quote: the only label one needs is the one that your parents gave you. Join us if you'd like to switch to softer language approach or individualized approaches instead of intervention. Let's talk more about preferences and problems. Nothing in the regs ever told us to care plan problems, even though we've sort of framed everything like a problem. And many of us are trying to get rid of that word toileting. How many of us say, excuse me, I'll be right back, I gotta go toilet myself. It's so funny. So trying to just talk normal: bathroom, restroom. One of our big goals in this 3-year initiative, which is a year and a half over, is that every person working in a Wyoming nursing home gets some culture change training. So I need your help with that. These webinars are free. There's a lot going on free and need your help to pass on the links. And another goal is every resident of a Wyoming nursing home sleeps until they wake up. And right now, Westward Heights is one of the main homes doing it. And so Taya Kness is going to talk with me on the next Wyoming Center on Aging Echo, and that will be December 8th, everybody, if you'd like to hear it. And we could also have her come on to these webinars. Let me know what you want. Natural Awakening. Please also know that I'm going to need a few more nursing homes in year 3 if you'd like to join. You just commit to learning and also getting a coaching call, and then commit to making at least 3 practice changes. And please save the date: Friday, August 11, 2023. We have places booked at the Inn at Lander. We have a conference, a 1-day in-person, God willing, conference. And if you have any culture change topics you would like, let me know. And our next webinar, oh dear, is the wrong title right there. Oh, wow. So please note this: December 16th. Don't look at that. December 16th. And guess what? I don't know what the topic is now because we finished out the dining practice standards. So I'd love to hear some topic desires from any of you. Anybody have anything to share? Ideas, questions? What do you think about all this? Could you guys also give me your scores? Thank you so much for coming. You guys are quiet today. Don Marie.
So Carmen, when asking about like what we would want to see, is it just dining room is what this series is?
No. Anything. Thanks, Carrie.
I have no
I'm so
right
excited
now.
for all of it. What'd you say, Kelly?
I have no thoughts right now.
It's okay. Don't you worry. I could propose some things, guys. I have a list actually that we've been working off of, so no pressure. But if anyone does have any desires, let me know, okay? Otherwise, I'll let you go. Thank you all so very much. Appreciate
Thanks,
you coming.
Carmen.
You bet. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye now.